Hey sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for cards from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s for the month of January 2024. Now, if you watched my video on the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for the cards from the 1940s, you know that starting this year, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit. Rather than just showing the top 10 sales, which may include multiple copies of the same card, maybe in different grades, I'm going to be looking at the top 10 cards. This way, it'll give you a better picture, more cards to look at of the sales that took place in that month. Now, if there are other copies of a particular card that had some significant sales, I'm also going to be mentioning them, but not go into as much detail as I do for each individual card. Now, for the month of January, for cards from the 1950s and 60s, there's going to be a lot of Mickey Mantle cards, but some other cards did make those two top 10 lists. And there's going to be a few surprises that are going to be on this list, and some cards that have reached new record sales for that card. So let's go take a look. Let's start off with the top 10 cards from the 1950s. At number 10, we have this 1953 Bowman Color Mickey Mantle in a PSA 7. This one sold on January 22nd for $7,500. It was a buy it now and sold for about $900 over the current VCP average price of $6,637. The record high sale for a PSA 7 was $14,520 back in October of 2022 through a golden auction. At number 9, this 1953 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 5. This one sold on January 29th for $7,600. This one was an auction. There were 75 bids and sold for a little bit above the current VCP average price of $7,282. The record high sale for a PSA 5 was $12,000 back in February of 2021 through an eBay listing. Now, there were three other significant sales of the 1953 Topps Mickey Mantle in January. One was a PSA 5 that sold on January 4th for $7,375. There was a PSA 4 that sold on January 19th for $7,300. And then another PSA 5 that sold on January 1st for $7,022. At number 8, we have this 1959 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 15th for $9,500. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $8,461. Now, this particular sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for a PSA 8 was $13,800 back in July of 2023 through a PWCC auction. At number 7, we have this 1954 Topps Hank Aaron rookie card in a PSA 6. This one sold on January 2nd for $12,000. It was a buy it now and sold for significantly above the current VCP average price of $8,922. The record high sale for a PSA 6 was $18,143 back in March of 2021 through a Huggins and Scott auction. At number 6, we have this 1957 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 29th for $12,678. It was an auction. There were 47 bids and sold for just a little bit above the current VCP average price of $12,217. However, the record high sale for a PSA 8 was $21,600 back in February of 2023 through a heritage auction. Now, there was one other 57 Topps Mickey Mantle that sold in January, another PSA 8 copy. This one also sold on January 29th for $9,989. At number 5, we have this 1951 Bowman Mickey Mantle rookie card in a PSA 3. This one sold on January 6th for $14,176. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 3 is $12,392. This particular sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for a PSA 3 was $74,000 back in February of 2021 through a PWCC listing on eBay. Now, there were some other 51 Bowman Mickey Mantles sold in January. One was a PSA 4 back on January 14th that sold for $13,350. There was a PSA 2 that sold on January 24th for $11,000, and another PSA 2 that sold on January 29th for $9,850. At number 4, we have this 1954 Topps Whitey Ford in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 6th for $15,000. It was a best offer, sold quite a bit above the current VCP average price of $11,744. The record high sale was $21,553 back in November of 2021 through eBay. Now, in a PSA 9, there are only 5 graded copies, and there has not been a PSA 10 graded copy of the 1954 Topps Whitey Ford. And this is the white back version as opposed to the gray back version of the Whitey Ford card. At number 3, we have the 1951 Bowman Willie Mays in a PSA 5. This one sold on January 1st for $18,300. It was an auction. There were 50 bids. The current VCP average price is $14,626, and this particular 51 Bowman Willie Mays sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for a PSA 5 was $32,100 back in March of 2021 through eBay. At number 2, we have this 1952 Topps Willie Mays in a PSA 5. Oh, the centering on that is perfect. Great colors. Great example of that Willie Mays card. This one sold on January 23rd for $22,480. It was an auction. There were 60 bids and sold for about $10,000 above the current VCP average price for a PSA 5 of $12,817. No doubt due to just the great centering and eye appeal of that PSA 5. The record high sale, though, was $34,800 back in April of 2022 through REA. Now, there were 2 other 52 Topps Willie Mays that sold in January. One was a PSA 4 that sold on January 26th for $12,800. And there was another PSA 5. As you can see, that one is a lot more off-centered than the other one. This one sold on January 22nd for $10,500. And at number 1, we have the 1955 Topps Sandy Koufax rookie card in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 2nd for $22,601. It was an auction. There were 142 bids on that auction. The current VCP average price, $25,087. So this one actually sold about $3,000, $2,500 less than the current VCP average price. The record high sale, though, for a PSA 8 was $80,626 back in June of 2016 through a Goodwin auction. All right, on to the cards from the 1960s. Coming in at number 10, we have this 1960 Topps Pedro Ramos in a PSA 9. Here's one of those surprise cards on this top 10 list. This one sold on January 24th for $3,960. It was an auction. There was only one bidder, and that's the current VCP average price, $3,960, and it is a new record high sale for that PSA 9. The previous high was only $213 all the way back in April of 2007 through eBay. Now, one of the reasons why this card probably sold for what it did, this PSA 9 is one of only 10 copies, and there has not been a PSA 10 graded copy of that Pedro Ramos 1960 Topps card. At number 9, we have this 1967 Topps Catfish Hunter in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 11th for $4,208. It was an auction. There were 27 bids. The current VCP average price is $3,623. Now, this particular sale represents a new record high sale for a PSA 10 copy. The previous high was $3,677 back in March of 2020 through a PWCC listing on eBay. Now, while there have been 65 graded a PSA 9, this one here is one of only 6 copies that have been graded a PSA 10. At number 8, we have this 1963 Topps Pete Rose rookie card in a PSA 7. This one sold on January 2nd for $4,325. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 7 is $3,773. The record high sale for a PSA 7 was $8,500 back in July of 2021 through a PWCC listing on eBay. And it was also matched in November of 2021 through a regular eBay auction. Now, there were 2 other Pete Rose rookie cards that had a significant sale in January. Both of them were PSA 7 copies. One sold on January 30th for $4,200, and another one sold on January 13th for $3,711. At number 7, we have this 1968 Topps Johnny Bench rookie card in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 7th for $4,556. It was an auction. There were 34 bids. The current VCP average price, $5,352. Now, this particular sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for a PSA 9 was $11,500 back in March of 2021 through eBay. Now, in a PSA 9, there have been 215 graded copies. There have only been 16 that have been graded a PSA 10. At number 6, we have this 1961 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 9th for $5,295. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $4,763. The record high sale for a PSA 8 was $10,025 back in December of 2022 through SCP auctions. At number 5, we have this 1963 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 18th for $5,500. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $5,911. The record high sale, though, was $14,700 back in March of 2023 through eBay. At number 4, we have this 1967 O-Pee-Chee Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 17th for $6,000. It was a buy it now and sold for above the current VCP average price of $5,280 and represents a new record high sale for a PSA 8 copy of that O-Pee-Chee version of the 67 Mickey Mantle card. The previous high was $4,560 back in June of 2023 through a PWCC auction. At number 3, we have this 1965 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8.5. This one sold on January 19th for $11,265. It was a buy it now and sold for quite a bit above the current VCP average price of $8,100, although this particular sale was not in VCP's database. Now, the record high sale was $11,100, so actually this would represent a new record high sale for an 8.5. And back then, the previous record was in April of 2022 through REA. Now, there was one other 1965 Topps Mickey Mantle that sold in January. This one, a PSA 8 copy, sold on January 19th for $5,500. At number 2, another interesting card showing up on the top 10 list here, we have the 1969 Topps Pirates rookies of Elvio Jimenez and Jim Schellenbach. Now, what makes this card special is this is the no black outline. So where you see the 1969 rookie stars, the normal version has those letters and numbers outlined in black. So this is an error version in 1969 Topps. This one is only in a PSA 3, but sold on January 21st for $13,600. It was an auction. There were 57 bids. There's no current VCP average price. This was not listed. In fact, in VCP's database, they do not have a listed sale in any grade of the no black outline version. Now, this card was also part of the high number series in the set. Now, according to PSA, in a PSA 3, there's only a population of 2, and only 11 cards have been graded higher than a PSA 3. All right, on to number 1. We have the 1968 Topps Nolan Ryan rookie card in a PSA 8.5. This one sold on January 4th for $16,400. It was a best offer, and the current VCP average price for an 8.5 is $19,050. This particular sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for an 8.5 was $30,000 back in September of 2022 through a PWCC Premier auction. And there were 2 other Nolan Ryan rookie cards that had significant sales in January, both of them PSA 8 copies. One sold on January 20th for $7,100, and another one on January 3rd for $6,888. All right, on to the cards from the 1970s. Coming in at number 10, we have this 1979 Topps Ozzie Smith rookie card in a rare PSA 9. This one sold on January 31st for $4,000. It was a best offer and sold for quite a bit above the current VCP average price of $2,334. Now, this sale as well was not in VCP's database. The record high sale, though, for a PSA 9 was $15,600 back in August of 2022 through a PWCC auction. Now, I did say that it was fairly rare for a PSA 9. I'm not sure about the total population of the Ozzie Smith rookie cards, graded population, but in a PSA 9, there are 402 copies. There are only 5 that have ever been graded a PSA 10. Now, there were 4 other 1979 Topps Ozzie Smith rookie cards that had significant sales in January, and all of them were PSA 9. So I guess they're not too rare when 5 of them sold in January. One sold on January 7th for $2,775, again, closer to that current VCP average price. Another one on January 25th for $2,550. Then there was one on January 15th for $2,125, and then finally one on January 6th for $2,076. At number 9, we have the 1977 Topps Rookie Catchers featuring the Dale Murphy rookie card in a PSA 10. Now, this card has shown up in previous top 10 lists. Very popular card and not too hard to find actually in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 16th for $4,001. It was a best offer, sold above the current VCP average price of $3,693. The record high was $5,777 back in October of 2022 through an eBay listing. Now, in a PSA 9, there have been 667 graded copies. In a PSA 10, though, a fairly healthy, given the year, of 64 PSA 10s that have been graded of the Dale Murphy rookie card. At number 8, we have this 1976 Topps Thurman Munson in a PSA 10. I really like this Thurman Munson card. This one sold on January 25th for $4,494. It was an auction. There were 41 bids. The current VCP average price, though, $2,856. Now, this particular sale was not in VCP's database, but would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 10 copy of the 76 Topps Thurman Munson card. The previous high was $3,631 back in January of this year, actually through Heritage. So it wouldn't show up on this list because I'm only looking at eBay sales, but also in January of this month, one sold for a little over $3,600. In a PSA 9, there had been 342 graded copies, but in this PSA 10 example, there have only been 39 graded copies. At number 7, we have this 1972 Topps Nolan Ryan in a PSA 9, one of my favorite Nolan Ryan cards. This one sold on January 23rd for $4,625. It was an auction. There were 40 bids. The current VCP average price, $3,966. So sold for about maybe a $700 premium over the current VCP average price. The record high sale for a PSA 9 was $6,000 back in September of 2022 through eBay. In this PSA 9, there have been 194 graded copies. There have only been 9 graded a PSA 10. Now, there was one other 1972 Topps Nolan Ryan card that sold in January, also a PSA 9 copy. This one sold on January 15th for $4,000. At number 6, we have this 1977 Topps Robin Yount in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 3rd for $5,105. It was an auction. There were 48 bids, and that's the current VCP average price, $5,105, and sold for just under the record high sale of $5,174 back in February of 2022 through memory lane. Now, while there have been 86 graded a PSA 9, this is one of only 11 copies that have been graded a PSA 10. At number 5, we have this 1976 Topps Mike Schmidt in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 28th for $6,216. It was an auction. There were 32 bids and sold for significantly less than the current VCP average price of $10,632. However, this sale was not in VCP's database. The record high sale for a PSA 10 was $22,200 back in January of 2023 through a Heritage auction. Now, while there have been 217 graded a PSA 9, there have only been 16 copies graded a PSA 10. At number 4, we have probably one of my favorite 1978 Topps cards, the Reggie Jackson in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 3rd for $7,877. It was an auction. There were 41 bids and sold for right around the VCP average price of $7,839. The record high sale was $9,900 back in May of 2022 through a heritage auction. While there have been 354 that have been graded a PSA 9, this one is one of only 22 that have been graded a PSA 10. At number 3, we have this 1979 Topps Pete Rose in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 13th for $8,500. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 10, $9,062. Now, this card also was not in VCP's database. The record high sale was $10,550 back in May of 2022 through an eBay auction. Now, in a PSA 9, there have been 249 graded copies, but this one here in a PSA 10 is one of only 16 copies ever to get that PSA 10 grade. At number 2, we have this 1970 Topps Nolan Ryan in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 29th for $9,250. It was an auction. There were 38 bids. The current VCP average price, $8,884. The record high sale, though, was $29,995 back in March of 2023 through eBay. Now, in a PSA 9, there have been 129 graded copies. There have only been 3 that have ever been graded a PSA 10. And finally, the number 1 card from the 1970s, this 1971 Topps Ron Klimkowski in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 23rd for a whopping $12,322. It was an auction. There were 35 bids, and it is the current VCP average price. This is the only reported sale of a PSA 10, and the reason being is while there are only 8 that have ever been graded a PSA 9, this one here is the only copy to ever be graded a PSA 10. There you go, the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for cards from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s for the month of January 2024. Would love to know in the comments what you think about the cards that made those 3 top 10 lists. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.